Fuck it.
In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there can be no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and is what we'll remember in the end. My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
Hello, my name is Joe, and I played Alan Wake 1 over 10 years ago. Let me start by saying that I love Sam Lake and Alan Wake 1. Alan Wake 1 is one of my favorite video games of all time because it was the first game that I ever played that really showed how creatively stories can be told. Remedy really flexed their chops with Alan Wake 1, and it's a story that Sam Lake has wanted to tell for many years. And I know this because there's a part in Max Payne where you can literally see children's drawings with crayons that show the story of the game as it happens. Fiction becoming reality. That's how long these ideas for Alan Wake have been in Sam Lake's head. I haven't played Quantum Break, and I didn't really like Control too much, but in general, I think Sam Lake and Remedy are geniuses. Sam Lake is Finnish Kojima, and Remedy continues to push the boundaries of what gaming can portray in creative ways constantly. You should know that I have 100% at this game. I have done, seen, and read every single thing that this game has to offer. I've watched many reviews, both positive and negative. However, an unsettling amount of those negative reviews were charged with bigoted Alan Woke type stuff, which I do not subscribe to. That being said, if you're here to see somebody talk about how they race-swapped Saga, or how she says stuff about white men telling her what to do, or how her daughter Logan could potentially be trans, this is not the video for you. I'm going to discuss things that were legitimate issues for me, both in the game and surrounding the game. So yeah, I really was looking forward to this game, and I still liked it overall, but this will be a mostly negative video. Before I get to those issues, though, I think it's only fair for me to point out the obviously great things that Remedy was able to pull off with Alan Wake 2. First and foremost, the game is beautiful. I mean, everybody knows this. This is one of the best looking games that's ever come out. It's probably the best looking game of the year at the very least. Yeah, this game's gorgeous. The ray tracing is pretty good. Even at low settings, you get good things out of the ray tracing. Performance, we'll get to that, but yeah, the graphics are fantastic. Voice acting and facial tracking for most of the characters, especially some of the cops in the beginning of the game and Rose at the diner. Out of this world, realistic facial animations. It's crazy. Saga, not so much, but we'll get to that. The live action material in this game, this is like a staple of Remedy games at this point, where they just throw in live action stuff. Over the top in this game, really fun. The commercials with the brothers are great. The musical in The Dark Place, everything is just great about the live action. There's also a literal 20-minute movie that you can watch towards the end of Alan's story, where it basically very convolutedly, if that's a word, explains the story. It's really fun to watch. Everything about the live action is great, which leads me into the other great thing about the live action, which is its way of visually directing the player. So in Alan's side specifically, there's a lot of visual guidance where, back to the musical again, there's a section where you have to follow these lit up arrows to escape the loop and have something spawn for you to progress. Also in the musical, you have people in the live action video pointing to where you need to go physically to progress. It's just really well done. Another great thing about Alan's side is the mechanic where he can change the scenes in real time. So Saga's gimmick is that she has a case board. You put stuff on the case board to progress the story. But Alan's gimmick is that he has, instead of a case board, he has a storyboard. And you have to unlock different scenes to mix and match with the scenario you're in, which will change how the scene looks and the theme and what you're able to interact with. It's one of the coolest mechanics I've ever experienced in a video game. It happens in real time, in a couple seconds. It's voodoo magic. I also really liked what they did with Alice in this game. She's just fantastic. I love the new actress they got for her. She contacted the FPC about Alan, and she tried to take pictures of Scratch to trap him in the photos because she understands how the dark place works. She intentionally goes back into the dark place towards the end of the story, or you learn at the end of the story, to help Alan and Saga by giving them the clicker, the bullet of light, calling Saga, I love Alice in this game. I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. So now we get to the negatives about Alan Wake 2, and unfortunately this list is going to be quite comprehensive. I only have so much to say about a game like this because I genuinely care. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this game for 10 years. So first off, before we even get into the game itself, this game is locked to Epic Games Launcher on PC, for now at least. And Epic Games Launcher fucking sucks. It really does. It's not as bad as like Origin or something, but definitely not on my list of launchers I want to use. And part of that is because you cannot turn off the achievement pop-ups, as far as I'm aware. You might be able to like go into the registry and do some shit with that. Anyway, so the achievement pop-ups in this game are scarier than the fucking jump scares in this game. Legitimately. The ping is so loud, it makes your game hitch, at least it made mine hitch, so loud, and it takes up a good portion of the screen, and it really takes you out of the experience in a game that wants you to be immersed, and that's going to be a common theme with my complaints in this game. It just constantly takes the immersion out. And this one isn't the game's fault, but it's only on this launcher on PC, so I have to mention it. And the other thing about Epic Games Launcher, at least for this game, it is online only, and it's a only single player game, and it's online only. And a lot of people have a big issue with that. I mean, it is a big issue, but I didn't have my internet disconnect when I was playing and lose 20 minutes of progress. Some people did. But yeah, there's also that. Epic Games Launcher sucks.
Teriyaki is a shit flavor.
So the first issue that I want to talk about is truly unforgivable in my eyes. It's the audio desync issue that occurs in pre-rendered cutscenes, like when you're driving in the car, those type of screens. It's bad, man. And this is a narrative-driven game that I've been waiting over 10 years for, and I had to miss the last 2 sentences of the cutscene because the audio would keep going and the visuals would not. And I usually read the subtitles because I have some type of like processing issue. It's easier for me to read. Anyway, yeah, I had to miss the last 2 sentences of the first cutscene in this game that I've been waiting 10 years for. And that just continued throughout the whole game. There wasn't a single cutscene that didn't have this issue. Really takes you out of it, and it makes me dread running up the cutscene every time because I know what's going to happen. Truly unforgivable in my eyes. Like, how was this not fixed in your, I'm going to say, at least 3-year development time? This is not the only thing in the game that suffers from lag or being sluggish in any way. The menus in this game are really bad, and I mean, it makes me want to turn off the game bad. There were points where I have to pull up the map, and it takes 20 seconds, a 20-second black screen, and then, since the map takes place in the mind place, it has to render the whole mind place when you press tab, so I have to wait 20 seconds for the map to show up, and then it's blurry as shit because it's not done rendering, and then I have to wait like 5 more seconds just to look at where I am on the map. And I'm the type of person that gets lost easily, so I need to pull up the map every like couple seconds, depending on the area, and I'm just wasting so much time. 25 seconds every time. It makes me think there's a memory leak issue of some kind. But yeah, it's because the game has to render the entire mind place. It's so bad. It's bafflingly bad, and I haven't seen anybody else talk about this. I have a 3080 Ti with a 20-thread CPU. Like, my computer is above average at the very least, but yeah, this is inexcusable. And if you want to talk about genuinely inexcusable things, I haven't seen anybody talk about this, but this pissed me off to no end, let me tell you. It is the fact that in Alan Wake 1, you pick up the manuscript page. Alan starts talking. He starts reading the page, right? Great. It's like one of the most iconic parts of the first game. And in this game, I didn't think that that would happen, that that existed, because you pick up the manuscript page and there's just on the screen, the only option for it is press F to read it, to get like text, right? So I thought that was it until I accidentally clicked on the name of the manuscript page and then Alan Wake reads it. This is one of the most iconic parts of this series, Alan Wake reading the manuscript pages, and it's not even in the UI. You don't even know that it exists unless you accidentally click on the name of the page. Why is this hidden? It's a complete oversight. The only option is for text to appear. There's no option for you to click on it. You have to do it on your own volition. And this is such an important part of the Alan Wake experience, and it's just hidden. I could not believe it when I found it. I found it like 3/4 of the way into my playthrough. So I had like 40 manuscript pages that I didn't have Alan Wake narrate, and I was just dumbfounded. I'm so upset about this. I really hope they add in some UI option that lets you know that this exists. Ridiculous. So we cannot talk about laggy menus or UI issues without talking about the notorious Saga case board. In the Mind Place, there's this case board, and you have to put all the pictures in the corresponding like investigative sections to progress the case board, right? Fine. But it is mandatory. And this is something that seems to exist purely for people who take a break from the game, or they like take a break from Saga's side of the game and do Alan's for a couple hours and then they come back and they might be a little lost. It seems like this only exists for that purpose. If that was the case, then fine, but this is a mandatory mechanic that you have to interact with, and it is so sluggish. The first time I interacted with this, I was dragging the pictures to the wrong spot. I was dragging the pictures to like the right side of the title section, right? Because I was like, oh, it's going to go in this section, so I'm going to put it where the other pictures are. And it wouldn't work until I realized you have to drag it onto the title, which, you know, not the biggest deal, but like, why couldn't both work? That bugged me. Yeah, the menus are slow for this. If you press F to open the folders, where you select the folder, which opens the corresponding case, laggy. The golden circle that appears on the top right of the folder, it overlaps with the layer of the folders in front of it, so you're not exactly sure which one you have to pick sometimes. And the absolute worst part about this, like I said, is that it is a mandatory mechanic that you have to engage with. There's no skipping this. You have to manually drag each and every one. Probably over 100 throughout the game. Definitely over 100 if you just take into the consideration the last part of the game with Saga. But anyway, you have to interact with this because progression in the physical world, objects appearing, stuff that you're able to interact with, is gated behind this case board. I had an experience after the first encounter in the game, basically, where Nightingale, you're in the like autopsy room and Nightingale becomes alive or whatever. I wandered around the room after that for actually over 10 minutes. And there was nothing to interact with. There was no extra dialogue with Casey, nothing. Until I just went into the Mind Place, which I didn't really acknowledge before this. I went in there and then I put something on the board. I came out and then I was able to progress. And my mind was completely blown because the progression was gated behind this stupid mechanic. And I went to talk to people when the game first came out. I talked to a couple friends about this, and I described the situation, and they cut me off halfway through, and they said, yep, same exact thing happened to me. 2 friends, same exact thing happened to them, where they're wandering around for 10, 15 minutes, going insane, because the game didn't tell them. They had to open the stupid Mind Place and put the picture on the board in order for them to progress. It's ridiculous. However, there is a UI element where on the bottom left of the screen, a golden eyeball or whatever will appear telling you that you have to go into the Mind Place, right? Fine. However, that doesn't show up 100% of the time when you have to go in there for mandatory progression. It seems like it's completely random, or it only shows up after a set period of time. It's not always there. So you're constantly checking, am I going insane, or do I just have to go into the Mind Place and put something in there? Or is the game bugging out, which, I'll get to in a little bit. Yeah, absolutely horrible mechanic. just because it's gated to physical progression and you cannot skip it. You have to manually do it constantly throughout the game. It takes you out of the game, literally takes you out of the game. Terrible. And it makes me, that single-handedly makes me not want to replay this game. I'm dead serious. It's so bad. So let me tell you about the worst mind place incident, we'll call it. So I was in Coffee World doing the part where you have to put the key items on the like cardboard cutouts on the mini stage, you know, that part. I was interacting with it and a wolf comes and attacks me during the animation of me putting the thing on the cardboard cutout, right? So it hits me out of it. I kill the wolf. Afterwards, I check the mind place and pop-up appears saying that you can't interact with the mind place at this time. So I'm thinking, okay, this is mandatory. I have to go explore and find something to interact with, right? I had to find a fuse for a fuse box or something. So I explore Coffee World. I scour this place for 20 minutes until I find the fuse box under the percolator or whatever. You have to stop it, go under it, find the fuse box, right? And it's not interactable. So I'm thinking, okay, I have to go like find the fuse or something to put it in here or take it out or something. So I go explore even more until I come back and just give up. So then I reload the game and my mind place works and I had to put a picture on the case board and then I went to the fuse box and it was interactable and then I could progress. So this wolf hitting me out of an animation broke my mind place. And since the physical progression in the world was tied to the mind place, I could not progress until I reset my game. And I could not tell if it was a bug or not. For 20 minutes, it being tied to physical progression in the world is just such poor design. So I've probably lost over an hour of real life time to this game just from the mind place either glitching out or, more noticeably, things not loading into the game properly. There was one section as Alan where you had to take the light bulb and like get the light from one thing, put it into another room with all the TVs in it to exit the Mr. Door section and go into New York for the first time, right? And I was stuck in that hallway going back and forth like an idiot for actually 20 minutes because, number one, when I changed the flashlight, or not the flashlight, when I changed the light bulb, the light in the area would just vanish. The whole place would go pitch black. And I thought that was intentional. And then it would just magically fix itself. I didn't know what was going on. And then I literally went into the settings, turned up the gamma all the way and the brightness just so I could see. And then I went into the room with all the TVs, that blue room that you're supposed to go. And the assets in the room, like the staircase, literally were not loaded in. That's why I couldn't do it. The staircase was not loaded in. So my character was just standing a layer below the floor of the room I'm supposed to go in. And I had to like reload the game and then it fixed it. But oh my God, this is not the only time the assets refuse to load in. And this happens a lot throughout the game because the game tries to do some voodoo magic and instantly render entire worlds in like 2 seconds because you're going back and forth from the mind place and the real world, or they're doing that looping shit. I even had one time where I literally fell through the game world as Saga going into the basement of the retirement home, that spooky section. I fell through the entire world and lost like 10 minutes of progress. That was awesome. Her arms were like breaking and contorting. Pretty cool. And even towards the end of the game, when you're a Saga in the dark place and you're opening the doors or whatever, I open the door from the subway to continue the loop or whatever, and the entire city of New York was not rendered. And I almost walked off into falling through the game world again. And I caught myself. And I was dumbfounded. They didn't render literally anything. Like, they try to do so much cool shit in this game with the mind place and loops and all this stuff that happens, and like Alan changing the scenes, which is really, really cool. But the game just does not keep up a lot of the time. Huh?
What the hell? Oh my God.
was pretty good.
All right, so it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, which is going to be talking about the story and the characters and then the gameplay. Obvious spoiler warning if you haven't played the game, so be careful. First thing I want to talk about is how many subtitle errors I've seen throughout the game. And this is basically the second half of my issue with the audio desync thing. The audio desyncing and then the subtitle issues throughout the game really take me out immersion-wise. There are just so many things in this game that make me realize I'm playing a video game and not experiencing a story, right? And throughout the game, the subtitle errors will range from things just being spelled wrong, or there being like 3 spaces after a word, or a couple times there was like a left bracket left over at the beginning of the sentence, stuff like that. It's just very odd. A company that cares so much about portraying their story, their interesting story, all these subtitle errors and the audio desync issue got through to the final release. You know what my favorite thing about playing a Remedy game is? It's when I'm about to go pick up a key item or open a door, and then I just get constantly jump scared 100 times throughout Saga's playthrough. That's my favorite thing. Yeah, the jump scares in this game are really dumb. Most of them aren't scary. The only time that it was legitimately kind of unsettling is when they were using a creepy old woman and she was actually screaming. And that is paired with the fact that it was in the retirement home section when you have to turn on the power, right? You get jump scared unironically like 3 times a minute in that section. It's so many times, and it's so lame because that section of the game is tense and creepy enough that it doesn't even need jump scares. The jump scares ruin it. Does that make sense? It ruins it because the scene was already good enough and scary enough without it. And I can understand that the jump scares where it's like the black and, people are screaming or whatever, that could be interpreted as the Taken trying to get into your mind, right? Sure. And Cynthia Weaver, which I think was the old woman's name, her whole thing was trying to like mind control people. She was like trying to mind control Tor in that section, right? Fine, but that doesn't really make it okay because there's a narrative reason. Like the quantity of the jump scares in this game is just too much and it loses all meaning. It's just annoying, especially when you realize, oh, every time I'm going to go pick up a key item or try to open this door or do literally anything, I'm just going to get jump scared. So you're just ready for it. It loses all meaning. I really wish there was a setting for this that you could just turn them off, because that's another thing that makes me not want to play this game, because it just takes me out of the game. Because if you're interpreting it as the Taken trying to get into your character's mind, that is hard to do because Saga literally doesn't react to it. I think she responds to it maybe once in the entire game. But yeah, it seems to be there just for the player. And that's not going to fly. All right, so now I get to talk about everybody's favorite FBI agent, Saga Anderson. And look, I'm all for strong female characters, but I don't think this one was it. And it's really just because she is an emotionless cardboard cutout of a character. She just stares blankly when she's talking, even when she's talking about her supposedly dead daughter that she's finding out is potentially dead. She doesn't really give a fuck, which is absurd. I talked earlier about how all of the NPCs, like the named NPCs, have incredibly detailed facial capture and voice acting, right? But Saga's voice acting is just okay, and her sense of danger is never there. Like when you're in the beginning of the game and you're killing these shadow people, she's more concerned about how killing these monsters and solving this case will be good for her career. And it doesn't help that most of her dialogue is done in the mind place where the whole point is that she is staring blankly and talking monotone, but it really just gets grating after a while when you are doing these like mind place telephone calls and it's the same exact structure every time. And she's like, oh, I need to make a pastrami sandwich. Could this person know the ingredients? And then it fades to the Subway employee, and the Subway employee goes, you need to heat the pan. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Now to melt the cheese from a cow. But what matters is how you feed the cow. And I just don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about the pastrami sandwich anymore. Just get on with it. Everybody wants to be Ati so bad, and it's a shame because Ati is awesome. He makes a return from Control. He's just as cool in this game. And I found out that Ati, the name, literally means God of the Sea in Finnish lore. So there you go. That makes sense. Anyway, I could try to come to Saga's defense here. I thought about this. Maybe she is a bit emotionless while everybody else is very animated as a way to portray that everyone around her is a victim of the story. They're literally characters and she isn't because she can see through it, right? She is technically still a character, but she's outside of the system, let's say, because of her powers. And, we can talk about how she's an important person because she's an important person. She has seer powers because she happens to be an Anderson. Okay, cool. And then at the end of the game, she has door powers because I guess it's implied that Mr. Door is her father. I also think Remedy kind of shot themselves in the foot by giving Saga literal superpowers because the whole point of the character is that she's able to solve all these cases that nobody else is able to, and it's super impressive, right? But when you give your character Game Shark, it kind of undermines what they've done. So she's one of the characters where she's important because of her bloodline. So she's important, and the character herself doesn't really stand on her own two legs. I'm not a fan of this character, and I'm definitely not a fan of how I'd say 80% of the game is her story. Alan's section was probably 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours long. And I'm saying this because I did Saga's story all the way through because I really wanted to play Alan's side. I wanted to do it all in one go because I love Alan. I did Saga's stuff. I did everything that I could. It took like 20 hours, 18 or 20 hours to 100% Saga's side. And then I beelined Alan's side, trying to find everything I could. It took probably 5 or 6 hours total. So the division of labor going towards the way less interesting character and less interesting story is a big reason why I'm not the biggest fan of this game. The only thing that I'll give it is that Alan's side is like way more interesting and engaging, right? But the actual gunplay and the enemies are not there. And it's like the complete opposite for Saga. The story is way less interesting, but the gameplay, you're fighting stuff a lot more often. Not often enough, which I'll get to because of my inventory management gripes. But yeah. Anyway, all of this makes me think that Estevez, the FBC agent, would have been a way more compelling and interesting female protagonist. The actress for her has great delivery. She has more agency and root in the story because she's literally an FBC agent that's coming to take over the case. You could literally keep the same story beats, but replace dead daughter with dead wife because she talks about having an ex-wife or whatever. Like, Estevez is such a more interesting character, and the actor does a great job, especially towards the end with that rock sequence. She's having a great time. Like, cool character, acted extremely well. I would have much rather had her as the female lead than Saga, who's extremely bland. But some gripes with the actual story itself. This is one of the games where everything is a twist, right? But you have to understand, if everything is a twist, then nothing is a twist because you catch on to that very quickly. And I have some specific examples that really tilted me. So the twist with Alan and Scratch, right? In the beginning, when you find Alan on the shore, I personally was thinking Alan and Scratch got out at the same time because they're the same person. And me thinking Alan's out also made me really not want to do Alan's side because in my eyes, it was all filler because he was already out. My mistake, right? You progress through the game, and then Scratch comes out and steals the clicker and kills Yako, whatever the brother's name is, right? And so you're like, oh, okay, this was Scratch the whole time, I'm thinking. And then at the end of the game, they reveal, oh yeah, Joseph, you were actually right the whole time. They are the same person. So it's like, oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. And another example of this is with Rose and the lunch boxes, or like her sanity, basically. So in the beginning of the game, you're talking to Rose, and she's like, "Oh yeah, your daughter's dead. You don't remember that?" and all this stuff. And you're immediately thinking, "Oh my, am I insane? Is Saga insane? Or is Rose insane?" Interesting. And then you find the lunch boxes, and then you go to the retirement home, and she says that she was contacted by Alan, and she sees all these messages, and you believe her because she knows what's going on, right? So you believe her. And then when you get out as Alan and you meet Rose, he's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't really send you any messages." So she is just a loony bin character. So you're right the first time. It's just like, if everything is a twist three ways, then you're going to be right the first time, and that's annoying in my opinion. What's also annoying about this game is that the story is quite literally incomplete at the moment, and it's in a couple ways. So, New Game Plus, first of all, will actually change the game, whether it's just new manuscript pages or not. But I think it's pretty likely that the New Game Plus that they're going to add down the line will tie into the whole, the dark place has shifting layers and it's a spiral that goes either down or up. The Tim police officer guy that's in the dark place right now, he said something about how the dark place shifts. So maybe you could tie into some roguelike element where the map changes every time. That'd be cool. Then you have the Lake House DLC, which will most certainly be important because that's what Estevez was talking about a lot of the game. And you also found emails talking about how the FBC agents were at the lake house. So you're going to learn some stuff there. And I think with the success of this game, these things aren't going to be solved in DLC, but in Alan Wake 3. And that's obvious, but it kind of hurts because we're not going to be able to see Alan get out until Alan Wake 3, probably, which, let's hope that doesn't take another 13 years. All right, so finally getting into some gameplay and mechanical gripes I have. I think it's only fair to start with the camera in this game. A lot of people have voiced their concerns about how they really hate how all of these survival horror games have the same over-the-shoulder camera, like the same exact camera, and I kind of agree. It's definitely a bit uninspired compared to the first Alan Wake, where it's really zoomed out and it, dynamically changes when certain enemies appear or when you get final blows and all that stuff. It was really cool in the first game. And to really hammer this home, when I was streaming Alan Wake 2, I had somebody come into my chat and literally ask me if this was the new Resident Evil. So, yeah. I also have to talk about the movement speed in this game in general. It's so glacially slow. And the worst part is that there's no toggle sprint option in the key bindings, so you just have to have your finger on the sprint button for minutes at a time with this really slow movement speed. My pinky hurt after a while, is all I'll say. This one's a big surprise. The dodge makes a return from Alan Wake 1, and it still sucks. It still doesn't feel great. And there are times where a guy will swing his pipe at me and I dodge it clean, but then it's like active the entire time he holds it down. So I still get hit after my dodge. It's not great. The map design for these three pretty open areas that she has to explore are very predictable, not very inspired. It's pretty much just, here's the linear path, and then, every couple 100 feet, there's a little fork in the road, and then there's a little optional content in that fork. And then you go back to the main path, rinse and repeat for the whole game, basically. That's the map design. And it's very simple. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but basically knowing where all of the optional collectibles are going to be, just from looking at the map, it kind of takes away from the immersion. So just like the dodge from Alan Wake 1, the iconic flashlight combat makes a return, and it is honestly more wonky and inconsistent than in Alan Wake 1, which is absurd to even say, because this is 13 years later. But I'm being serious, and it's mainly because instead of it being a constant stream like in Alan Wake 1, it is divided into bursts with sections. So, that's fine. But the problem is you have to shine onto like very specific parts of the enemies, and it's pretty finicky sometimes. So a lot of the time you aren't able to like perfectly finish the armor that you're shredding off. So you have to spend an entire extra bar of flashlight just to finish off that little part of armor you missed. And it feels super bad having to waste that extra battery. Another generic problem this game has is with the melee. If you press spacebar, you do a melee that's a get off me. It does decent damage. It stuns the enemy, right? It's cool. Uh, it's pretty buggy sometimes. I commando lunged at somebody a couple times, which is pretty funny. But the worst part about it, by a country mile, is that when you melee somebody and then you aim and try to shoot them, the game literally fights you. It's like tugging your reticle away. It just does not function. I'll put up gameplay of that happening a billion times. That's because the game incentivizes you to melee and then shoot people, because Saga's double barrel shotgun, for example, has an upgrade that does more damage after you stun somebody, right? So I'm trying to melee them, shoot them with the shotgun for extra damage because I'm right in front of them, and the reticle just won't move. I'm aiming over them, basically. It's one of the most baffling things that's ever been in a video game. And this very well could just be for keyboard and mouse and work perfectly fine on controller, but that doesn't make it okay. Speaking of things that also literally do not function, as Saga, you get a crossbow. And one of the upgrades for that is a charge function, basically, where it does extra damage if you fully charge it. Cool. But if you hold right click and then immediately start charging, trying to charge as quick as possible because, these guys are running at you, the click only happens when you fully charge the crossbow bolt. I'm setting the stage for you. So you're doing this, you're waiting for the click, but it never comes, because if you charge the crossbow too quickly after aiming down sights, it will not charge. How did this get through? How did this get through to the real game? How did nobody complain about this? I haven't seen anybody complain about this, but it's real. You can test it. At least when I played through the game, there have been a couple patches, but I haven't seen anything about fixing this. Yeah. So you're just sitting, hoping that your crossbow is charging with your thumb up your ass until you get hit because you're waiting for a click that never comes. It feels horrible. I know I've been complaining a lot about Saga-specific stuff. However, there is one saving grace, and it's that Saga has a really fun reload cancel exploit. I made a video on, you can check that out, where basically you dodge and it cancels the reload and fully reloads your gun. Well, unless it's the pump action on the rifle, it doesn't fully reload that, but yeah. And that only works if you have the deer charm on for some reason. That's the one saving grace about Saga's combat, is that you have a really funny reload cancel that is a bit engaging to mess with. As for Alan's gameplay, there's not really much to say. I mean, his is most definitely closer to a walking sim, because the enemies that you fight are not plentiful. Despite feeling like you're surrounded, they're like fake enemies, right? With these shadows. And the whole gimmick is that you're not sure which ones are real, even though you can kind of pick them out if their shadow is thicker, or if you see them holding something, that's indications that they're real. It's serviceable. Like, it's tense for the first part of the game, and then I didn't really care about it after that. It also doesn't help that there's only like 2 enemy types, maybe just 1 in Alan's section. There's no big guys. There's just melee guys, and then melee guys that blink. They dash around. So gameplay is not really great on Alan's side, I will say. So this is one of my biggest gripes about this game by far, and it's that the inventory system and the inventory management is some of the worst I have ever experienced in a game, and it's not even close. It's so bad. So, I mean, first of all, when you are just dragging an item from like your shoebox to your inventory or just moving it around your inventory, it's sluggish. Sometimes when you click on it, it just won't drag for whatever reason. Makes no sense. And one of the biggest issues with this inventory is that you find ammo, right? You find ammo in the game world, it does not tell you how much ammo is in that instance that you're going to pick up, right? So it could be 2 bullets, it could be 12 bullets for your handgun, for all you know. So I had an incident, we'll call it the rocket flare incident. So in the forest of Saga, I opened this chest, right? And it had some rocket flares in it, sure. Well, I'm strapped for inventory space. I pick it up, the rocket flares each take up an entire inventory slot per rocket flare. 1 rocket flare is a whole stack. So I picked up 2 rocket flares. I'm nowhere near a save room. So I have to run my ass back to the save room, put the rocket flares in, go back, and then I pick up 2 more rocket flares. Okay, that's great. Is this like an infinite rocket flare chest? I'm thinking. So I go back 2 more times I do that. There's like 6 rocket flares in there. I spend like 7 minutes just running back and forth, making room for these rocket flares. Because 1, the game doesn't tell you how many are in there, and 2, each rocket flare takes up 1 stack. It's so stupid. And the other stupid thing about the stacking and the ammo count is that if you overflow on ammo, I noticed this way early on in my playthrough, I would have like 20 extra pistol ammo, right? And that seemed to be the max. I would pick up the handgun ammo, notice that it wouldn't go up, and then I would check my inventory, and it doesn't create an extra stack of handgun ammo. So the ammo just vanishes if you pick it up and you're at capacity. It doesn't create an extra stack, which is absurd. In a survival horror game, the ammo just vanishes. And then the game invisibly increases your max ammo count. Now, this isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's just really dumb because I'm used to having like a capacity of 20 handgun ammo. And then after the halfway point in the game, I notice that I'm just magically allowed to have more. And all that combined with the stacking issue in the inventory, where like the rocket flare is the most egregious example because one of them takes up an entire inventory slot. That combined with everything else, combined with the fact that you cannot increase the inventory space for the shoebox. I literally was at capacity for the shoebox, which is your storage, halfway through the game in the survival horror game on hard because there's not enough enemies to fight basically. I had like 70 handgun ammo, like 50 shotgun ammo, all these throwables, because I couldn't use them. Another of the most annoying item in the game is the coffee mug charm that you will get 5 copies of throughout the game. If you're doing all the side content, you'll get 5 copies of it, and you can't just delete it. And that's the one where it basically heals you to full when you die. So I literally found myself killing myself on purpose to get these charms out of my inventory because I needed to make room for shit. It's just one of the worst inventory systems I've ever played. Fundamentally, it's a bad inventory system, and it's definitely a horrible inventory system if I'm at capacity halfway through the game until the end of the game in your survival horror game. Where's the survival aspect? I have enough supplies to give away to the homeless shelter. It's absurd. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Alan Wake 2. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. I've never really made a video like this before, where I'm kind of just rambling with some bullet points, clearing my mind. I was actually going to make videos on both Starfield and Redfall earlier in the year, because Bethesda really betrayed the exploration aspect of Starfield, and Redfall is Redfall. It's actually the worst video game I've ever played in my life. That being said, I pulled the trigger on this video for Alan Wake because Alan Wake 1, like I said, is one of my favorite games of all time. I really care about this, and that's kind of the thesis of what I do. I complain about stuff that I genuinely care about. And the fact of the matter is that this game is actually good. It's a good game deep down, but my experience was heavily compromised by all of the technical issues that I had. This game was very much a Jedi Survivor situation, and what I mean by that is the game itself is good or even great, but because of the technical issues, it's genuinely hard, or in the case of Jedi Survivor, literally impossible to enjoy. I had to refund that game, and that's also a game I was looking forward to for years. But with this game, even if they magically fix all of the technical issues, I mean, there have been several patches since I stopped playing the game, I still don't think the game is a 9.5 to a 10 out of 10 like every outlet is saying. It's ironic because I railed on Saga for a big portion of this video, but I genuinely relate to her because I'm hearing all this stuff around me. It's a masterpiece. It's a 10 out of 10, the best game. It's going to win Game of the Year, which it probably will. But I know that it's not really true, at least at launch. The experience at launch is most definitely not a 10 out of 10, at least on PC, at least for me. Yeah, I kind of feel like Saga because I feel like I'm going insane because everybody's saying all this stuff that I don't agree with and I don't think it's true. But once again, there is a reason why this video wasn't called Alan Wake 2 is trash or Alan Wake 2 sucks or whatever. That's because, like I said, the game is good or even great deep down. I just had so many issues that compromised my experience, and I wanted to share that with you. It is a mostly negative review because I'm mostly talking about negative things about the game. That's it. I still think it's a good game. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. Any feedback is appreciated. I'll see you in the next one, ? Bye. Hold on, I'm checking my notes real quick and I think I forgot something. Oh yeah, there's no Barry Wheeler in this game. You know what, you're right, this game fucking sucks.